brought his culinary magic to Clearwater's Harborview Center in March of 1997. Prior to that, he owned and operated Metro Catering Company in Tampa, but Chef Turzak's experience reaches far outside the Tampa Bay area. He was executive chef at the American Stanhope Hotel on Fifth Avenue in New York, and Gordon's, one of Chicago Magazine's top 10 restaurants in the Windy City. He owned 5 restaurants in Chicago, among them Turzak's, Chameleon, Ketchup, and Tamales. He's also consulted for top-rated restaurants in Florida, Virginia, Chicago, and New York. Chef Turzak studied culinary arts at Du Père School of French Cooking in Glenview, Illinois, and was acknowledged by Food and Wine magazine as one of the top 60 chefs in America. For years, he hosted the cable TV series Great American Cookout, but now he's the host of What's Cooking Harborview?
Hi, and welcome to another edition of What's Cooking Harborview. Now, today's menu is going to be very special for the winter in Florida, of course. We're making a baked acorn squash soup, baked inside the acorn squash and served in it. And we're doing a roast stuffed pork with sauteed apples and sweet and sour purple cabbage and roasted shallots. And then we're going to make a bread and butter pudding cake with warm caramel sauce, which is totally to die for. So we're going to get started and jump right in to make the acorn squash soup. Now first, what I did was I took a couple of whole beautiful acorn squashes, which are in season right now, and I put them in the oven and roasted them for an hour and 15 minutes so they get nice and tender. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them open, take the seeds out of there, because now they're easier to clean now that you got they're slightly roasted because they're tender. Before you roast them, they're just a little bit too tough, you know? We're going to cut them into some wedges. We're going to do that with 2 of them. Now this soup, which of course you can get the recipes for later on, they'll be on our website, and you can also mail in for them, so you don't have to pay too close attention. There you go. Let's get this last one here. This is the kind of dish that your guests would probably be a little bit impressed with. I'm going to take the skins off. Because you're gonna puree this soup, and you definitely don't want the skins in there. Now the whole acorn squash that I have here, I took the top off, and I took the seeds out, and I roasted that in an oven for about an hour and 15 minutes also, so it's nice and tender. And what we're going to do is, when the soup is hot, we'll warm up the shell, and then we'll just ladle the soup into it, you see? Okay, that's enough there to get us started. Now, we're going to take about a half of an onion, and saute that. We're going to take that, and we're going to get it into our hot saucepan that we've got back here. We're going to put our onion in there. And our squash, without the skins, of course. And we're going to mix that up and let that cook for a couple of minutes. Then we're going to pour some chicken stock on there. But while that's cooking, what we're going to do is we're going to get the sweet and sour cabbage started that we're going to serve with the roast pork. Now, this is what we're going to need here. Okay. Now you take yourself a nice, big, beautiful purple cabbage. You clean the outside leaves off of it, cut it in half, and you cut the stems out, like so. And then you slice your cabbage up, nice and thin. Like so. Being careful, of course, not to cut your fingers off. That would not be good. Okay, now we're going to take another onion and slice that up. This is a real old classic kind of German dish, this sweet and sour cabbage. You can probably just make it and serve it as a regular vegetable too. You don't have to serve it with this particular dish, although it goes with it very nicely. All right, now we're going to take some more butter. We have another hot pan back here. And boom, there you go. And we'll throw those onions in there. Now we're going to take a little bit of sugar and a little bit of pepper and a little bit of red wine vinegar. Put that all over that. And a little bit of garlic. Now we'll throw the cabbage in here. Oh, whoosh, that vinegar is strong. Okay, now I'm going to put just a touch of cinnamon in there. And we're going to let that cook for about 15 or 20 minutes. Okay, now you see we've sauteed the squash with the onions a little bit, and then I added the 3 quarts of chicken stock to it, and we're going to let that boil for a little bit so the onions and the squash get completely tender before we puree it. Now, that sweet and sour cabbage, I'm just going to add that little bit of chicken stock to that so it has a little moisture to kind of steam and saute it at the same time while it's cooking. And we'll put a lid on there now. We'll let that cook for about 15, 20 minutes, and we'll come right back to that. All right, now to wrap up that acorn squash soup, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take our soup that has been cooking with the squash and the onions, and it's nice and tender now. We're going to pour it in the pitcher. Now, this soup is kind of called like a potage because it's thickened with the natural starch of the vegetable. Now we're going to put a couple ounces of butter in there. We're going to put a little bit of nutmeg in there. And we're going to put a little pepper. And a little bit of salt. And just a touch of cream, but not much. Now we're going to take what we call our Rambo here, which is a larger version of what you have at home, like Hamilton Beach makes or something, which is a small blender. If you don't have this, just put this whole thing in your blender. See there? Boom. That's done. Quick, too. Okay, now, let's just give that a little taste. This is good. This needs a little bit more salt. Okay, now, kind of like the final presentation. Now, this I got nice and hot in the oven, so that after you get done eating the soup, then you can go in there with your spoon and eat the squash too, see? And we're going to pour our soup in there, like so. Then we're going to throw a few little toasted seeds that we pulled out of the squash earlier. A little bit of chopped parsley. Throw that on there. And then throw that cap back on there before we serve it, you see? Isn't that great? Look at that, will you? Just the best. Anyway. Okay, now we got that soup done. Now we're going to move into the main course. Now what I have here is a center-cut boneless pork loin. And what I did was I cut a little hole with the knife all the way through. Then I stuck my steel through here. Now we're going to open this up so we can fit our sausage into it with a piece of pipe that I have. Now we're going to put a little bit of oil in here to help the pipe glide through here. See here, and just kind of stuff it through there like that. There you go. That way you know you can get your sausage in there. Now, this sausage is cured and smoked. It's a piece of andouille. Now, if you don't use something like that, when you do use your sausage, you make sure you cook your sausage first completely and that it's cold when you stuff it in. Because when you reheat this roast, what you don't want to have to worry about is, let's get a little more oil in there. Make sure that gets through there. There you go. Now, what you want to make sure is that you don't have to cook the roast, that you have to cook the sausage too. Because if you have to cook the sausage and the roast, you'll overcook the roast by the time you get the sausage cooked. Okay, now we're going to get this puppy a little seasoned up with a little bit of olive oil. That'll help the things we're about to put on it stick to it too, you see? I'm going to put a fair amount of salt on this, which you would put on any slow roasting roast, you know? Lots of fresh ground pepper. There you go. And some of that delicious garlic. Gotta have garlic on there. Okay, now we're gonna tie this up. The easy method of tying up, of course. No point in doing the complicated stuff here today. We're gonna boom. And we want to keep this nice and tight because we don't want our sausage falling out after we slice it, especially since it's got a little bit of oil in there when we stuffed it in there. It gives it more of a reason to fall out. So if it's tight, then it kind of helps keep it in after we slice it too, you know? All right, now kind of weave our rosemary underneath the string. So get it nice and attached to there because we want the aroma of that delicious rosemary on there. I'll throw one back here. Look at that, isn't that nice? Boom. Now you can do this a few hours ahead of time, so it gives the roast and all these spices and the flavor a time to permeate the meat a little bit before you roast it, but you don't have to. The most important thing about roasting it, so that you keep the pork nice and juicy, is that you roast it on a very slow oven. I would recommend that you roast this at 250 degrees, no more than 275. So we'll pop this in the oven, and we'll pull that out in about 40 minutes, probably is what it's going to take. Okay, now we're going to make those things that I told you about earlier that go with the roast pork, the roasted shallots and the sauteed apples. Now for the roasted shallots, we're going to get a hot pan, put a little bit of butter in there, and we're going to take a dozen shallots or so and put them in there. We add some salt and pepper, which is the number two, the two essential ingredients in life, and then a little dried leaf thyme. And we're going to put those around in the pan a little bit. Now we're going to take a little bit of beef juice, put that in there, like that. Now we're going to tuck this into the oven with the roast pork. So while the pork is roasting, we can roast those shallots, you see, in a separate pan. Just slide that in there. Okay, now for the apples. Now the apples you don't want to cook too much because you don't want them all soggy. So you just want to brown them a little bit quickly in a real hot pan. Boom, there you go. We're going to put a little bit of pepper only on the apples. You don't want to put salt on your apples now because it take away from the sweetness. Even though these aren't especially sweet, these are Granny Smith apples, and you definitely want to use those instead of the reds. We're going to put those on there and we'll brown them for about 2-3 minutes. And then we'll get them on that pork roast. Okay, now we got that pork roast, that's all done. But I've been letting that pork roast relax for a few minutes when it comes out of the oven, because when it's hot and you cut it, the juices all bleed out real fast, and that applies to any roast. Now, let's get the string off of here. And we'll put this thing together. And this is probably one of the nicest family-style, home-style, winter or fall-type dishes you can make. It's just perfect. Now, still a little bit warm though. Okay, there you go. Now, always got a little extra sausage on the end there to taste, huh? Okay. Okay, this looks great. Let's see if we can just kind of transfer this to our dish and turn this into a little spiral here. Like so. There we go. Now, we're going to take our purple cabbage and kind of decorate the outside of that with that. And we're going to put our apples on there that we sauteed so ever so gently. Like so. And finally, we're going to put the shallots on there. Remember, we got all this beef juice in here now, which we're going to kind of use as the sauce that we're going to put over the pork. This is that roasted shallot juice with that dried leaf thyme in it. These shallots are just awesome. Now, the thing about shallots you might want to keep in mind is that, we'll just pour that juice right on there, is that one shallot is the equivalent to 6 onions in terms of concentrated strength. A little known fact as to why they became so popular. Now, we're going to take a little bit of watercress, some garnish in the middle of this. Like so. And voila, there you have. This is Home Style November. It's got it written all over it. I know you'd enjoy this.
I'm John LaChance, Food and Beverage Director here at the Harborview Center. If you enjoyed what you saw today, you can join Chef John in person for cooking classes. If you'd just like to enjoy our cuisine, you can call our sales department and book a room for your next function.
All right, we're back with that unbelievable, delicious, and world-famous bread and butter pudding cake. Now, what I did was I started the caramel sauce, which is back here, which is a couple ounces of butter and a cup of sugar. And that's cooking, and it's going to get brown and bubbly, and we're going to add cream to that in a few minutes, and it's going to be finished. And that's really very good sauce. But meanwhile, we'll get the bread pudding done. Now, what I did was I took white square sandwich bread, and I buttered it on one side, and I toasted it only on one side. Now we're going to trim it, trim all the crusts off so that only the crumb is left, like that. Now we pattern it into the bowl. I chose kind of a small souffle mold for this. It serves about 6 portions here, you see? And you just kind of get your pattern in there, kind of like a spiral overlapping. Okay. That took exactly 12 pieces of bread. All right, now we're going to sprinkle a little bit of sugar on that and a little bit of cinnamon on that. Okay, that's perfect. Now, I've got 2 whole eggs and 4 egg yolks in here and 1 cup of sugar. I'm going to cream that together a little bit. That way the sugar will be dissolved. It will be nice and homogeneous with the egg yolks. Now I've got 3 cups of milk back here that I scalded. We're going to whisk that into here. Like so. And I'm going to season that with just a touch of vanilla. Now we're going to skim the foam off the top of this because we don't want foam baking on top of our bread pudding. Like so. Come on, foam, get off of there. We don't have all day. Okay, there you go. That's good enough. Now, in the middle of your pudding or someplace isolated rather than the whole pudding, you pour your custard because you want to keep the tips of the bread dry. And if you pour it all over, it'll get them soggy. So we'll pour that in there in the middle. And all the custard's going to come up and start floating there. See there? Look at that. It's just whoop, floating right up to the top. Boom, there you go. Now we're going to take this and we're going to put it into our hot bain-marie water bath we have back here. Okay, we get this beautiful bread pudding in the oven here real quick. We'll bake that at about 400 degrees for about half an hour until it's nice and firm. All right. Now, you see the sugar and the butter here are all nice and brown and mixed together here. You want to be careful when you add your cream to this because it has a tendency to steam up and you can get your face burnt here a little bit, you see? But, see all that steam coming up there? Okay, add your cream to it. So it's nice and thin. It's funny, but the more you add the cream, the darker it gets. It makes no sense to me, but that's how it works. Okay. There you go. Boom. Just perfect. Just perfect. Okay, now, with the miracle of television, we have a finished bread pudding that I made earlier. Now we're going to get rid of some of this stuff. And we're going to dust this with powdered sugar, like so. And we're going to cut ourselves a little slice of pie out of here, like so. Let's see if we can get this out of here in one piece with a rubber scraper. That first piece is always the hardest one to get out. After that, it kind of gets a little bit easier. There you go, like so. Oh, that looks nice. So you got your nice, soft, spongy custard on the inside, and then the tips on top of the pudding are crispy. And it's the combination of the two textures that makes it so good. Now, we'll ladle a little bit of the caramel sauce on here. The warm caramel sauce, that is, and that's the only way you want to serve this. Like so. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is holiday pudding all day long. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month.